Ma. Om. This video is about Bhāva. Bhāva is literally translated in Sanskrit as mood or feeling or emotion. That's how it's used in the secular sense. In the spiritual sense, Bhāva is roughly translated as divine mood or sweet mood. And people involved in the yogic traditions, especially in bhakti, talk about Bhāva. It's like a divine emotion. So in the Vaishnava traditions, the Krishna traditions, Bhāva is one of the acknowledged stages of progression on the path to self-realization or Krishna consciousness. In the Baal tradition, the wandering heretical minstrels, tantrics of West Bengal, they also have a lot of teaching about Bhāva and Rasa. Bhāva is the divine mood, and Rasa is the juice. So Bhāva and Rasa are central to their practice, you could say. They're singing and dancing. Bhāva in the Shakta tradition, the tradition of the Divine Mother, means something a little different. So Bhāva is when a deity, yes, usually a Hindu deity, enters the body, and for all intents and purposes, the being is in a positive state of possession by the deity. You can see this in Indian temples sometimes, in Shakta temples, where a woman or many women are seemingly possessed by different forms of the goddess, most especially Kālī, but also Durga. And it tends to happen at their temples. Most of the people who one sees in this type of Bhāva are in trance Bhāva. So trance Bhāva, as the name implies, is when the being undergoing the Bhāva is not conscious at the time. It's as if they were asleep, they're in a trance. And when they come to after the divine mood has left, they have no memory of what transpired. The second type of Bhāva that one sees, feels, and experiences is where the being who undergoes the Bhāva and the deity cohabit a single consciousness. So there's some kind of duality going on still between the jiva, the individual soul, and the deity, but they're cohabiting a single space. So a famous example of this connection would be Sri Ramakrishna. So sometimes he would enter Bhāva and transfer spiritual energy to his disciples as Kālī, using his feet, his left or his right foot, depending. Another example of Bhāva, we can say a deeper Bhāva, also called Bhav, is Anandamayi Ma. So the Indian saint Anandamayi Ma, for all intents and purposes, was the Divine Mother. Whether she became that or whether she was born that way, it's not clear. From her biographies, it says she was born that way. in which case she would be an avatar. So a divine incarnation, embodiment of God with no residual personality, egoic structure left, like a clear emanation of the divine embodied. We say that Krishna was an avatar, or Ram was an avatar, so at that kind of level. I call that Mahabhava, the great Bhava. Whether you're incarnated as that or whether you become it, you have no residual personality left, and you're the divine mood just emanating. So Bhava is widespread practice, actually. You just don't see much of it. But there are many substrata and sections of Shakta worship which have Bhava as a feature. In some Caribbean nations, the guru undergoes this Bhava and then answers questions for the community as the deity. It happens in India as well. So the community organizes around the one undergoing Bhava, and that person usually is administering practical advice and suggestions and healings for the community that they're involved in. In Anandamayi Ma's case, she was a guru and advising people on self-realization, so she wasn't, although there were healings around her, and although she did give advice, her primary role was to encourage getting closer to God and becoming God-realized. So you see, this is a wonderful area to mine. Actually, very little is written about it. I guess all the people, all the Matajis, the women undergoing, and it's mostly women, undergoing Bhava, don't really have an interest in writing about it. And all those years where there was the printed word, but women had no rights in India, no education, no schooling, and were mostly illiterate. They weren't writing either. And you can imagine a room of people undergoing Bhava, no one's really interested in jotting something down. So Bhava can manifest in many beautiful ways. In my personal experience, I've experienced in this body or witnessed Hanuman Bhava, Durga Bhava, of course Kālī Bhava in different forms, Shiva as Mahadeva Bhava, Krishna Bhava. What to make of this, that these deities come to visit and embody the seeker, the meditator. From my experience and from my intuition and discernment, again, not much is written about this. I feel that these frequencies, these deities, these entities, these divine emanations, are a feature of Shakta or Divine Mother sadhana, particularly as it relates to kundalini. So it's like the marriage of the kundalini phenomena and the kundalini journey and kundalini sadhana with bhakti and worship of Divine Mother, usually as her form as Kālī. When you fuse those two together, or when they're fused together, very often you get Bhava. And Bhava is controversial, of course, because some people think people are faking it. Some people think it's all a show. Some people actually make a show of it. There's a tradition of sacred theater in India, and the one undergoing Bhava can put on costumes and all sorts of things to enhance the mood of the feeling of this divine emanation of this Bhava, and the devotees love it, you know. So this is we can say that the deities, the frequencies, the divinity comes to encourage the sadhana, the spiritual practice. It gives, rasa, gives juice and gives life and gives vibrancy and love to the spiritual practice. It's just so inspiring, and wow. Now one has to be careful not to be attached to these bhava, because they come and they go. In a later case, maybe Anandamayi Ma, it doesn't go. But until then, if that ever happens, they come and go. So like everything that comes and goes, it's best not to be attached or adverse, to just be equanimous, lovingly equanimous in the face of all this phenomena, any kundalini phenomena or spiritual phenomena. So one shouldn't reject it, one shouldn't condemn it, one shouldn't avoid it, but also one shouldn't cling to it. Where is Krishna? Why isn't Krishna come this week? I find myself with thoughts like that. Have I done something wrong? Where is he? So it's, of course, there's also a lot of doubt and skepticism, even for me in my own journey, like why would Krishna or Kālī come here to encourage my sadhana? And it's not about me, who are you? So that's the wrong context to look in it. It's just part of divinity manifesting in all of us, and when kundalini is active, very active, and again fused with bhakti, this is just part of the terrain. It's not special to you as a personality complex, but it is a noted feature of bhakti and kundalini and the Shakta, Divine Mother, Kālī path. So when you undergo Bhāva, I've never been in a trance Bhāva, but I've been in the ones where I seemingly cohabit consciousness with the deity, and you literally feel like the deity. When you're Hanuman, you have that big mace, is that what he carries? And I've seen people pounding their chests like monkeys, running around like monkeys. You're Hanuman, there's no doubt. You move in a way, in a speed, and with a strength that no human is going to move, or you would need lots of training. No one's just sitting down to meditate and having that happen to them if it's not real. So Hanuman, when he appears, when the one undergoing Bhāva is Hanuman, he is there to bless, we can say, the being undergoing the Bhāva and all those who are present as well. Because all this shaktipat and spirituality is really non-local. So it applies to everyone in the room at the very least, is receiving, let's say, Hanuman's blessing. Also, from my experience, I feel that the different deities arrive when you might need some support in a particular area. And it gets kind of tricky because, who called what in, and anyway, I've let all that go, it just is what it is. But when you need extra strength, maybe Durga arrives. Or even before you need extra strength, Durga arrives, and when Durga arrives, you think, oh, something's going on, I need extra strength. Or maybe some kind of you need to be resolute and really in your center, so Shiva arrives, or Hanuman again, the strength, the courage. Sometimes very feminine versions of goddesses appear, and in those maybe you need to be more playful and more heart-opening and heart-centered. So this is an amazing gift, amazing blessing that these deities come to work with us, we can say, in our sadhana to bring us back to self. So the deities all seem to have an interest or a feeling of advancing your sadhana. That's my experience, certainly. So I'm not skeptical or doubting or in fear of what they have to offer, even in the strong forms of gods or goddesses that appear, like Rudra is a strong form of Shiva, or strong forms of Kālī. When they arrive, there's still a bliss, love, joy element in the ether. So even though the form might seem to be fierce and with roaring and or very super deep masculine voice, in the case of Shiva, earth rumbling masculine voice, you know not to be afraid, because it's beautiful and it's glorious and it's blissful and it's joyous, and the other people present are also feeling that same mood, even if the emanation is strong or gentle. So Bhāva is a beautiful gift of the kundalini sadhana path, we can say the Kālī path. And some people will say that Bhāva is not a mark of spiritual progress, and that one should pay no attention to that. Some people think it's just a projection of your subconscious in Western psychological terms. Like you're just, you think you're Kālī, but it's only your subconscious projecting from stuff you've read and other things, and it's just like a psychological manifestation. From my experience, I don't think it's either of those things. And because the physicality, the gestures, the mudras, the teachings, it's just not possible to come from the subconscious, or I can't say not possible, but highly unlikely. And as far as a mark of spiritual progress, I feel in my journey, if I look at it, I wouldn't go as far to say as an attainment or a goal or anything like that, because that's too linear and too acquisitive. It's more like a blessing accompanying you on your sadhana, and where that and how that blessing manifests, of course, is just grace. Who knows when or if these different deities will come again, ever come again, come every day, pop in and out. You don't know. It's completely grace. So of course, detachment is the proper mood to take with that, as well as devotion to your process, devotion to Divine Mother, devotion to all the deities, without getting attached. And it is a sign of some kind of progress in your sadhana, in that you have to be a pretty open vessel for those deities to manifest. In a closed, shut system, they're highly unlikely to manifest, but as we can say your chakras or your field opens up, they are more likely to manifest. And the stronger the manifestations are, and the more frequent the manifestations are, and the more embodied especially those manifestations are, it is a sign of, we can say, opening up to the divine, or your inherent divinity shining forth with the assist of this Bhāva, with these beings. So it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful phenomena, Bhāva. Wonderful part of the Divine Mother journey. And for me, it's been, it's just been such a wonderful, distinct blessing. And one of the most amazing parts of this Bhāva is it spreads. Yeah. So what I noticed in my journey is that when I meditate with people and this body undergoes Bhāva, sometimes after one meditation, but sometimes later, sometimes never, but quite often the people who come to meditate with me also begin to undergo Bhāva, mostly Kālī Bhāva. So at the first stage of this path, of this school of yoga, I would consider the first stage as the Kundalini awakening stage. So the first milestone is that Kundalini is fully awake in Sushumna, and that would be the first sign of real progress in this path. And the second sign would be Bhāva, because that would again show that the meditator is an open enough vessel for these very refined, loving, strong frequencies to manifest. And there can be many people undergoing Bhāva in the same room. There can be 5 Kālīs in the room. That's a fun meditation. So that also teaches you not get too attached to like my Kālī or I am Kālī, you know, the personality complex, because actually everyone is capable of manifesting. That's not willfully manifesting, but have manifested in them all these deities. And people ask me, is it limited to Hinduism? I thought yes, that this was a feature of kundalini sadhana, of the Shakta path, of the Kālī path. And but when you're open, other information and frequencies arrive too. And I've had Bhāva from the Christian tradition, ascended masters, people I've never even really heard their name or didn't know much about them, and they would come in the body, an embodied experience of this entity, of this frequency, giving information, but also conveying blessings both to this body and to the people present when it's happening. So I could go on a lot about this Bhāva. It's awesome. And I'll make more videos in the future about it. But for now, I'm going to leave it here. And I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful journey. Jai Ma.